This is India Simmons interviewing Mrs. Vivian Rutledge on June 14th, 2018 in the History Department. So, Ms. Hawkins, would you like to tell us when and where were you born?
I'm a native Dallasite, so I was born in Dallas, Texas at Parkland Hospital, January 24th, 1959.
And would you like to tell us what your neighborhood was like growing up?
I grew up in Hamilton Park, which was a neighborhood basically developed for middle-class blacks in Dallas during that time. There was really no place for blacks to live safely if they wanted to move up in the Dallas area. So that neighborhood was developed specifically for that group. And my parents bought a house there when it was first developed in the mid-50s, and that's where I grew up.
Will you tell us a little about your family?
Well, there was my mom and my dad. My mom was originally from Louisiana. My dad was a native Texan. He grew up primarily in Jefferson, and then spent most of his time here in the Dallas area. My mother moved to the Dallas area, I think, when she was probably early 20s. Wow, what else? I have two older brothers and a younger sister. The oldest brother is 7 years older than me, and the other one is 5 years older. And then my sister's about six years younger than me. So there was a kind of big gap. We all still live here in basically the Dallas area, so I get to see them. It's nice.
That's nice.
Yeah, we had a pretty good relationship, I say, growing up. We've gotten closer as we've gotten older, though. I think that happens because you grow up and you know how to deal with each other's, idiosyncrasies, and you're more accepting of each other as people, so it's good.
Growing up, what did a normal day at home look like?
Well, I think of primarily when I was a child. Were you thinking about any specific time period? No. Okay. What I think of is waking up on a school morning and having breakfast in front of the TV, watching cartoons with my brothers, or the Three Stooges, or whatever was on at the time. Hamilton Park had its own school that was 1st to 12th grade, so we were all in one school. And I remember walking to school, in the mornings, and coming home in the afternoons, often going down to the church that was at the end of the street to pick up my little sister, and then going on home. Both of my parents worked. My dad had a store, an auto parts store in South Dallas, and he was open 6 days a week. So in some ways, my mom was like a single mom, but she also worked. So, we went to work with her sometimes. She did a variety of things. Sometimes she cleaned houses. She's also worked in daycare area, just various things, VNA, Visiting Nurse Association. So it was a good life. I can't complain. Yeah.
How would you describe race relations growing up?
Well, growing up, Hamilton Park was a black neighborhood. So that's mostly what I grew up with. I wouldn't say that I spent a lot of time encountering whites, and that's mainly what was around, because there were no Asians and Hispanics, and only on those times when I went to work with my mom sometimes, the person whose houses she cleaned, I would meet them sometimes. She would get clothes. Their girls would grow out of their clothes. They would hand them down to us, and they were nice clothes, so no complaints about that. I can't say that I really spent a lot of time encountering people on a regular basis other than blacks until I started junior high. And that was in Richardson School District. And my expectations well, let me back up a little bit. When I was younger, most of what I saw with whites was on television. And to me, they all had money. They all went to better schools, so they had a big advantage over me. And plus, I thought that, could I have a paper napkin or something? I feel like I'm sweating a lot. It's kind of hot. Do I need to pause, or can I keep going? Okay. So I also saw guys, and guys seemed to have everything. So when I was very young, I was not thrilled about being black. I was not thrilled about being a girl, because people different from me had all of the advantages.
Right.
So when I started junior high, and our neighborhood was split into 3 areas. Thank you so much. Our neighborhood was split into 3 areas. So all of the students who were eligible to go to junior high at that time went to 3 different junior highs, and it was like that with the high schools as well. So when I went, first off, they all looked alike. And I know it's funny because you hear that with black, well, they all kind of looked alike to me, because during that time, that was the early 70s. So there was just this long hair and jeans and t-shirts, and that's what everybody was wearing. And it took some adjustment to get kind of used to that and actually start to see people as individuals. And I also learned that these people that I had all these preconceived notions about did not all have more money than my family. They were not all smarter than me. I found myself making better grades than a lot of the people in my class. So busing for me, and I know there's a lot of different opinions about it, but to me, it was a fantastic, eye-opening experience, because mixing with people that you only wondered about before, you learn that there's a wide variety of attitudes and economic statuses, everything, just like there is within your own community. So I thought that being bused was, in the long run, one of the best things to ever happen to me. So it was a positive thing.
What was high school like?
Well, high school, there were very few of us, and I say us, black students, at Richardson High School. That's where I went to school. At that time, it only went, I think it's 10th through 12th grade. There were probably almost 3,000 students in the school. You have to bear in mind, we were baby boomers, so we were just all over the place. But there were just a handful of blacks at the school. Now, and some of this is a carryover, I think, from junior high, you'd hear a lot of the corny jokes. People wore afros a lot at that time. And there were the jokes. How many times did I hear about sticking your finger in did you stick your finger in a light socket? It's like, oh, I haven't heard that one before. But I think in general, we got on okay. It was not a school that had a lot of fights or anything going on in it. And I would say that most of the cliques, thank you, most of the cliques were the usual ones. You know, you had your jocks, and you had your druggies, and you had your kind of hippie folks. So even though blacks hung out a lot, like at lunch, there was a table with mostly blacks and things like that, there was some mixing going on. So it wasn't a bad experience. Once again, it was an enlightening one, and I kind of enjoyed high school. You know, I really did. I was not the most active student there, but I liked to participate in the pep rallies and things like that. So, and also during that time period, we had our first eagleette, which was a member of the drill team. Our first black eagleette was during that time period, and at that time, there was something to be very proud of. It was about time. Yeah.
What prompted you to choose SMU?
Funny story. Way back when I was a kid, the family would take Sunday drives, and that's just something that families did. You know, you get in a car and you just take a drive around the neighborhood or outside the neighborhood, just Sunday drives, and you talk and look. One day my dad was driving on Mockingbird Lane, and I know I was in elementary school, and I looked over and I said, "Oh, what's that?" when I saw the campus. And he said, "Well, that's SMU, it's a university." I said, "Oh," I said, "I want to go to school there when I get big." And I remember my mom saying, "Well, it's very expensive." And the child I was, my response was, "I don't care. I want to go." Never changed my mind. When I was a senior in high school, I applied to one school. And I think in retrospect, that's really dumb. But I applied here. That was it. I applied early. And I got my acceptance letter right before my 18th birthday in January. So I was thrilled. I mean, this was it. This is where I was going to go to school. No questions. That's how I ended up here.
What was SMU's reputation amongst the Black community?
You know, I really don't know how to answer that. All I know are the people that I mingled with here on campus. And I know that I think there were a couple of Black sororities on campus during that time. I was not particularly interested in joining one, so I never did. I know that there was like a Black students organization, but I really didn't get involved with that either. And I think part of that had to do with the fact that I was a townie, that's what they called us at the time, and I commuted. So I didn't live on campus, and I was not able to develop that same type of closeness or relationship with a lot of the students on campus. The people I was closest to were also townies. So I came here and I went to class. I went over to the student union, specifically on Wednesdays, because that's when they had the chocolate frozen yogurt, which was really good. But otherwise, I came to class, and if I needed to go to the library, I went, and I went home.
On your first day here, how welcoming was the campus?
I do not remember that. That was a long time ago. I remember, signing up for classes and having to do that outside. And nowadays, I wonder how did we ever get any information communicated without email and things like that. It's like, oh gosh, everything was posted on poles or bulletin boards throughout campus. It's kind of nuts when I think about it now. But I don't remember ever feeling like I was treated differently because I was Black. But at the same time, I never really felt like I fit in here. And to me, that was more of an economic thing than anything else. Because I remember when it was time for spring break and hearing some of the students talk about, oh, they're going to Puerto Rico, or they're going to Hawaii, or I'm like, I'm not even going to Fort Worth. I don't have the money to do that. My family doesn't have the money to do that. So there was that disparity, between the two. And I think that was part of the reason why I never really felt comfortable, being a student here. And it was a very conservative environment. I'm not the most conservative person, very liberal person. So that was kind of odd as well. I found that the professors were a lot more liberal than the students were. So I got more of my connection from that, and my livelihood and ability to stay on campus here and continue going to school here because of the professors, not so much because of the students.
What was your social life like?
Most of that was, of course, away from campus. I did have a pretty good friendship with a couple of girls that were townies. both white, here on campus. And it's because I think we all kind of had a love of rock and roll, which kind of differentiated me a little bit from some people. So after school, primarily on weekends, we would go to clubs, go to movies, things like that. There were a couple of bands that I really liked, and there was a friend of mine who also came here from Richardson High School, but she only stayed here about a year. She was black, but we continued to see each other, despite her no longer coming to school here. But it was mainly hanging out with them, Like you say, the clubs, and I love live music, and we spent a lot of time doing that. It was fun. But a couple of things that I do remember too, specifically here, was coming to hear some of the great speakers that SMU always had. And you had an opportunity to enjoy that experience as a student here. In fact, I was here when Gloria Steinem originally spoke, and I'm not sure if you know who that is, but big time women's feminist. And she drew a huge crowd. It was just so fabulous, especially for her to come here of all places to speak, because she was just way out here with the liberal on the liberal limb, So it was odd, but it was so fantastic to see and hear her speak. It's great.
What would you say was your most memorable experience here?
Gloria Steinem, I would say, was the most memorable. Some of the professors, a couple of professors specifically, I was a double major, psychology and English, and I didn't decide until my junior year that I wanted to add on the English degree, because I thought, well, I think I can do this. And a couple of my professors were very hard, but they were great. And that's my main memory, and being very proud that I got the first A in one of my English classes, because I remember the first time we had to turn in a paper. The professor, Bonnie, came in and she handed them out, and the first time ever I had a D on a paper. I didn't get D's on papers, so I was very unhappy, but apparently everybody else was unhappy too. Nobody did well. The second paper was a C, the third was a B. The next time, the fourth paper, she came in and she said, "We finally got an A in this class." And she started reading the paper, and it was my paper. And I was just so happy, so proud. And I got an A in that class. So it was fantastic. And the other one, Willard Spiegelman, I know I think he retired not too terribly long ago, but very dapper. I thought he was fantastic. But he was a professor here for a long time. And I think I took maybe Shakespeare and some other courses with him. And he was, once again, not the easiest on campus, but he just made everything come alive. Just fantastic. And courses with Dr. Jack Strange. And the funny thing about him is that he also taught abnormal psychology. So I had abnormal psychology with Dr. Strange. That was always fun to talk about. But the professors were the best memory that I have, because they were great. They were great.
So in the psychology and English departments, how did race relations manifest themselves in that?
For the most part, I'd say I don't remember experiencing anything, positive or negative, except for one occasion. I may have been, I don't know if I was a freshman or a sophomore, and it wasn't necessarily a negative experience, but it was something that I guess kind of took me by surprise. the professor, and I don't remember her name offhand, was talking about, I think, different styles of writing. And one of the students in the class asked about, and I don't remember exactly how it was phrased, but it was basically asking about minorities writing differently than, I guess, the whites or the majority in the class. And I think at that time I was the only black student in the class, which I was used to. I was used to that from junior high and high school. And I remember her commenting, well, Vivian has never written anything in any kind of vernacular, or, she hasn't written anything differently than anybody else in the classroom. Once again, it wasn't a negative experience with her. She was just responding to the student. But it did put a lot of attention on me. And I guess in some ways I felt a little bit like, why would you even think that? Especially being black in America, you kind of go back and forth between two worlds. How you relate to a white person is not necessarily going to be the way you relate to blacks. And it's been even more interesting for me to watch because my husband is white. And we have 2 daughters. And to me, I've always felt like I needed to raise them as biracial. I say, you're this and you're this. Don't ever let anybody tell you anything else. Even though generally in America, there's the old 1 drop rule that 1 drop of black blood makes you black. And I just don't know, that's just racism. But it's just been kind of interesting to see them go out into the world as opposed to the way the world was when I was growing up. Because the high school I went to I think it's almost more Hispanic than anything else right now. And and they're Asians. There's everything. The neighborhood that we live in is very mixed with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I love it, and that's the reason why we ended up there. But the way they view things are just a little different from me, because there are things that can still kind of rouse me that they don't think anything about because they never had to deal with it. They haven't had the same kind of just subtle history. So it's been interesting, to say the least.
Did you have any mentors?
I can't say that I did, not really, and I kind of regret that because I kind of felt that a lot of the professors was sort of on a pedestal and untouchable in some ways. So I never really learned how to relate to them as human beings. As regular people, I guess you could say. So no, I didn't. I just kind of made my way through myself.
How well did you feel that the black community was represented here during your time here?
Football players, which I don't know if that was good or bad, because in some ways I feel like that's the main reason they were here, is to help the football team, and there's not any other real purpose. Of course, there were other students here just like me that were just here to get an education. And oh gosh, I wish I could remember her name. There was a person here that was my contemporary, so she was here the same time I was, who became an actress. And but we never really encountered each other because she was on one end of the campus, down with the auditorium and all of that stuff, and I spent all my time here shuttling back and forth between Dallas Hall and Fondren Hall, and so I just, there were casual relationships. I think we were accepted on campus because that's what was expected. Once again, I wouldn't say that there was anything overt, regarding any negativity, but just a discomfort of not feeling like I totally belonged. And I'm not sure if the other students felt that way or not.
What effect did the lack of representation have on you?
I was used to it, so I can't say that it really had much of an effect on me. From the time I went to junior high to high school to here, being the only black in the class or the only one of two in the class, it was something I was used to. I'd become accustomed to that. It was really no big deal.
As you reflect back on your time at SMU, how do you feel about it?
I would have to say it seems to have not changed a lot. And that's because I mentioned to you while we were walking in that I did come back here in 2013 for about a year and a half, 2013 to 2014. I came back and I worked part-time in the bursar's office. I was at the front desk. Once again, it's a retirement job. So I didn't want anything to strain myself. I did all that and I didn't want to do any more of it. So I encountered a lot of the students at the bursar's office, for making payments and whatnot. And there still seemed to be a certain sense of entitlement among the students, especially among some of the parents that I encountered. It's not something that I really like being around, but as I've gotten older, I've learned that I shouldn't let that get to me, because in some ways, they just don't know any better, and I'm pretty much don't think you're better than me for whatever reason, because you're not. So I've come a long way from that little girl who didn't want to be black and didn't want to be female. So I've kind of empowered all of that now.
Nice.
And there's a certain freedom, and as you get older, it's like you just, I don't care what they think. I can do what I want. I can think what I want. I have just as much right to be anywhere as anyone else. It's a great place to be.
So after your studies at SMU, did you continue any more studies?
Well, actually, I did get accepted into the graduate program. My intent initially was to be a psychologist. That's what I wanted to do. Had a lot of psychology courses by the time I graduated. But by the time the fall rolled around again for me to start classes, I did not have that enthusiasm that you would often have once the summer's over. You get bored and you're ready to go back to school. That didn't happen. I went to class on Monday and I went to class on Tuesday, and I decided I just didn't want to go to school anymore, and I withdrew. And I remember the person who was over the program said, well, we really hate to see you go. You can return within, I think, the next couple of years if you'd like to come back. And I said, well, I appreciate that. But I didn't go back. I was just tired of school. And by the time I made it to attend graduate school, I didn't know if I even wanted to do that anymore. So, and I was one of those things I was really hoping I'd never regret, and I didn't. So it worked out.
What did you do afterwards?
Well, the economy was awful in 1981. I barely found myself a part-time job. Attending school at SMU didn't seem to help at all because, I'm right here in Dallas, and a lot of people go to SMU, so it's not like it was something that was really special or different. I didn't have mentors, as you mentioned before. So I did find a part-time job. And after a while, I ended up falling into a job working for the state of Texas. So I ended up getting on with the state of Texas a couple of years later and ended up retiring from the state of Texas. It's awesome, really. But that's what I ended up doing. I worked at the Texas Workforce Commission most of my career and then switched over to University of Texas at Dallas. And that's where I retired from, and working in human resources. So I still got to use a little bit of that writing, a little bit of that psychology. It just wasn't in the way that I had initially thought it would be used. It worked out.
And you mentioned earlier you have daughters.
Yes.
Will you tell us more about your family?
The oldest is 31. The youngest is about to turn 28. They were both born here, native Dalesites. I went to the same high school I went to, which was really kind of weird. Because, you're thinking I would never walk those halls again. And then the next thing you know, it's like I'm back there. And it's like, oh wow, this is really kind of cool. But they're geeks. Both of them, they're geeks. They like they like the Harry Potter. They're into the Marvel, the comics. One of them is really into what is it? Oh gosh, it's Japanese, the frilly dresses and all of this stuff. I can't think of the name of it, but she's really anime. In fact, both of them are going to Comic-Con again this year in San Diego. They are something else. Both single. One's engaged, though. The oldest lives in Austin, which is perfect for her because it's the freedom there. I love Austin. It's so different from Dallas. Dallas is so stuck on being sophisticated and being ahead of the game and all the ritzy. And you get to Austin, it's like, whoa, here I am. Yeah, this is who I am. Let's go out and do all kinds of oddball type things. And it's great. I love visiting. The youngest actually works at UT Dallas, where I work, still part-time. But both of them worked there during the summers when they were out of school, college. As far as schools with them, even though we came here with the oldest to visit the campus, and the youngest came here for one of those engineering camps I think they did during the summer. She attended that, and of course they show you around and during that time. But they ended up going to different coasts to school. The oldest went to New York University, and the youngest went to this tiny little school called Willamette University in Salem, Oregon. And it's funny because when they were little, we would always tease them and say, oh, when you get older and go to college, you're going to go far, far away. And they did.
Do you have any regrets at all?
About coming to school here?
Anything.
Anything?
Anything.
Well, there are always some regrets about things, some decisions that you wish you would have, maybe taken a different direction. But all in all, I'd have to say no. I feel like I got a good education here, talking about SMU. Not so much on a social side, but I had some awesome professors here. And I would not change that. If I could pick them up and move them to a different location, I probably would have done that. And I don't regret the beauty of the campus. It was always nice to wander around here. I remember when I was working in the bursar's office, I think part of the technique to get new students to enroll here was to get them on campus, because they felt like if they could get them on campus, they've got them. Because you look at this and it's like, oh, I gotta be here, Harvard of the South. So, no, I'm in a really good place in my life right now. I'm very happy. I get to travel. You know, there's a lot of flexibility in my part-time job. I can just tell my boss, well, I'm going to, where are we going? Copenhagen in a couple of months, because why not? You know, and I just tell my boss I'm going to be gone during this time period. So you can't beat that. So things are good. Things are good. Can't wait to be a grandma. I hope it happens someday. But you know, the girls are good. They're great to be around, and I think we enjoy each other's company.
Do you remain involved with SME in any way?
No, I really have not. I mean, I still read the catalogs and things that come when they show up, and I still get the occasional phone call for money. That will never go away. Sometimes I toss a few bucks, sometimes I don't, because I get those calls from my girls' colleges too. So you know, it just kind of comes with the territory, I guess. But it's nice. I like walking around college campuses, so this one's always a pleasure to walk around. And I'm proud to have gone to school here. I am.
Is there anything at all you feel I may have missed that you would like to further discuss?
I don't really think so. The only thing that comes to mind before I came to school here, and I guess I should have mentioned it earlier, when I was still in high school and I'd gotten accepted here, and I remember someone asking me, it was a white student, a white guy, asking me where I was going to school, and I said SMU, and I remember that his response was, "Oh, they only let you in because you're black." Like, no. I had very good grades. I did terrible on the SAT. I really did. I'm just not a test taker. But I did great. I mean, if they had the top 10% at that time, I would have been in the top 10%. So comments like that, all you can do is just live well and show them.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think that's it.
Thank you so much.
This has been fun. This really has been fun.
Thank you for agreeing to be a part of our project.
Well, I'm glad that I agreed to do it. At first I was a little like, I don't know, but this has been a great experience.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.